The weekend. All right, let's have a listen in to Malcolm Turnbull. The Prime Minister is there with his Innovation Minister, Pyne. Slightly shiny forehead. He should probably have a bit of makeup on. But anyway, let's have a listen in.
Good friend and colleague, the Minister for Industry, Innovation and Science, Pyne, to usher in the ideas boom. The mining boom, the mining construction boom has been great for Australia. It has driven growth in incomes. But, as we've seen, the mining boom inevitably has receded. What is going to drive Australian prosperity in the years ahead? How does our economy transition? Our innovation agenda is going to help create the modern, dynamic 21st century economy Australia needs. Our fundamentals are strong. We're in our 25th year of consecutive economic growth. But we need new sources of growth if we're to maintain our high standard of living, high wages and generous social welfare safety net. Although there are challenges, there has never been a better time to start and grow a business from Australia, which can now compete for customers located anywhere in the world. We are on the doorstep of Asia, the world's economic engine room, and our new trade agreements with China, Japan and Korea are opening up more doors in Asia for our business. There has never been a more exciting time to be an Australian business. There have never been more opportunities on the horizon for Australians. The internet and the technologies it enables mean we are now part of a truly global marketplace. It means there are fewer barriers to entry for Australian businesses, no matter where they are located, right across Australia. They can sell their products and services to just about every corner of the globe. Our universities, our research organisations like the CSIRO, where we are today, and our workforce are world-class. But Australia is falling behind when it comes to commercialising good ideas and collaborating with industry. Australia consistently ranks last or second last among OECD countries for business research collaboration. Increasing collaboration between businesses, universities and the research sector is absolutely critical for our businesses to remain competitive. To commercialise an idea, a great invention, a great innovation, a great piece of research, and then grow it into new sources of revenue, new jobs, new opportunities, new industries. Companies that embrace innovation, that are agile and prepared to approach change confidently and with a sense of optimism are more competitive, more able to grow market share and more likely to increase their employment. More jobs, more growth. That is the focus of my government. And we are absolutely committed to ensuring that our students have the skills to find high-wage and rewarding jobs, regardless of their qualifications or career path. We're going to do this by promoting coding and computing in schools to ensure our students have the problem-solving and critical reasoning skills for the jobs of the future. We cannot future-proof ourselves from change, nor should we seek to do so. But we can ensure that our students are graduating with the skills and the agility to identify opportunities and embrace risk. Now, the government's innovation package that we are releasing today will incentivise and reward innovation, entrepreneurship and risk-taking by focusing on 4 key areas. First, culture and capital, embracing risk and incentivising early-stage investment in startups. You will see in this package there will be new incentives, new drivers to ensure that Australians with new business ideas, with new enterprises will be able better to find the capital that gets them started. And you know something? Even if their businesses don't succeed, we all benefit. We learn so much from the failure of new businesses. We want to be a culture, a national culture of innovation, of risk-taking, because as we do that, We grow the whole ecosystem of innovation right across the economy. We become more experienced, more innovative, more agile, more prepared to take on risk. We become a culture of ideas, because it is the ideas boom that will secure our prosperity in the future. It is believing in our human capital and remembering that the best assets we have, the most important assets we have in this country, are not to be found under the ground, but walking around on top of it. It is the 24 million Australians, the men and women of Australia. These and their ideas are what secures our future. And this package will incentivise, dynamise, energise that enormous opportunity. We are going to drive business research collaboration, ensuring that there is greater collaboration between organisations like the CSIRO, universities, other research institutions and business to commercialise ideas and solve problems. And on that note, let me pay tribute to the CSIRO, which has been a leader in this field but will do so much more. Its new CEO, Larry Marshall, its new chairman, David Thodey, fresh from his transformational leadership at Telstra, are transforming the culture of this organisation, of the CSIRO, so that it becomes, like a number of its counterparts in other countries, much more engaged with business, so that it is not only driving growth in Australia, but it is also ensuring that more Australians are imbued with its culture of imagination, of research, of invention, so that it goes right across the nation. This is not just a list of measures and incentives and the levers that governments pull. This package is designed to inspire. It is designed to lead. It is designed to encourage every single business, large or small, to be more innovative, to be more prepared, to have a go at something new. Because in the world of the 21st century, in 2015, that is how you prosper. We are going to focus on talent and skills, training our students for the jobs of the future, and ensuring that we attract the world's best innovative talent to Australia. I said that our best assets are walking around on top of the earth. You know something? So are everybody else's. And we want to have the best talent come to Australia, whether they come to Australia for the first time or whether they are a foreign student that has done postgraduate work here and wants to stay here and develop new businesses, contribute to the innovative economy of Australia. We want to make sure we retain and gain the best human capital that we can. And finally, the fourth pillar of this agenda is government leading by example in the way it invests in and uses technology. Right across the board, you will see there are measures to ensure that government is digitally transformed, so that it is nimble, so that you can deal with government as easily as you can with eBay or with one of the big financial institutions. We should be able to transact with government for most of our engagement on our smartphone. Digital works. It transforms, makes it easier for business, easier for government. It is, and the other thing that we must do is ensure that we embrace small business. And you will see here measures that are going to make it much easier for smaller Australian businesses to sell to government and for government to buy from them. There have been too many barriers. It's been too hard, too much red tape, too many forms. We can sweep that aside. In 2015, we don't need that. We need to work swiftly and nimbly, and government has to lead the way. This is the opportunity of the 21st century. This is a century of ideas. This is a time when Australia's growth, when our living standards, when our incomes will be determined by the human capital, the intellectual capital that all of us have. By unleashing our innovation, unleashing our imagination, being prepared to embrace change, we usher in the ideas boom. That is the next boom for Australia. And you know something? Unlike a mining boom, it is a boom that can continue forever. It is limited only by our imagination. And I know that Australians believe in themselves. I know that we are a creative and imaginative nation, and inspired, led, incentivised, we will have a very long ideas boom in the 21st century.
Hear, hear. Well said. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And firstly, on behalf of the Cabinet and the party, can I thank the Prime Minister for creating a situation where we have a whole-of-government approach to innovation and science. Soon after being made the Minister for Industry, Innovation and Science, we convened a task force which brought together 9 different government departments, 11 different ministers, and determined what could be done to move the Australian economy from an old economic model to a new economic model. That was because of the inspiring leadership of Malcolm Turnbull, his reflexive and instinctive understanding that innovation and ideas are the future of the Australian economy. We have had for decades, a couple of centuries really, an economy based on mining, on agriculture, education services, more recently tourism, more recently financial services. But the future of the Australian economy is to support all of those areas, but also to expand into the ideas boom that we are talking about today. So today is the announcement of the centrepiece of the government's domestic economic policy agenda. It is a very comprehensive statement. It covers over 24 different measures, as large as a new CSIRO innovation fund, a biomedical translation fund, a new compact or partnership, if you like, between government and universities and business around research development at universities. There are many different aspects to this: landing pads overseas, international collaboration, support for incubators, visa changes. The Prime Minister has touched on many of them. But overall, they are designed to bring together all those in Australia who recognise that the future for our economy is in high-tech, advanced manufacturing, the way we use data, and we cover every aspect of that in this particular agenda that's been announced today. And we're particularly focusing on start-ups, on small and medium enterprises, on regional Australia, whether it's in agriculture or tourism or mining. We are using all the different parts of our economy to drive jobs and to drive growth, because that's what the Australian public are looking for. We'll always deal with all the other issues that governments have to deal with, but this is an agenda that is about jobs, it's about growth, it's about the future of the Australian economy. I won't go through all the measures. There are many of them in the document which will be reported in the coming days, but obviously we're very happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Prime Minister, why is there only $9 million allocated in this financial year to accelerate?
$9 million for which particular measure?
Well, because it's the bulk of the measures begin from the 1st of July 2016. That's right. That's the reason.
The CSIRO $200 million in the biomedical fund. It says they're not off the budget bottom line. Can you explain how that works? And the funding for NICTA, the restored funding for NICTA, is that part of the CSIRO fund or is that separate as well?
Well, there is a $75 million allocation to Data 61. In which they will do a number of different measures. One of those will be to establish the relationship between government and business in terms of the $5 billion ICT expenditure each year by government and the wider $50 billion procurement by government. So the DTO will be asked to establish a digital marketplace where small and medium enterprises put up on this digital marketplace what they are offering, and the public service and government will be able to access that and say we can use those particular services. Data 61 will be doing something different, which will be saying what government wants to do and asking for support from business, and that is in addition to the money that is being allocated to the CSIRO Innovation Fund, which is $200 million, made up of the receipts from the Wi-Fi inventions of the CSIRO, a combination of private sector support and a direct injection of funds from the Commonwealth, which will be all on the table at the back of the glossy document. The reason why they don't show up as the budget bottom line is because They are a combination of taking equity and supporting investments that will be made by the CSIRO and the Biomedical Translation Fund. So they're not direct grants. They will be dealt with. Of course, if they make a loss, they'll show up on the budget bottom line as a loss. If they make a profit, they'll show up as revenue to government. But the actual investments are not grants to the CSIRO or to the new Biomedical Translation Fund.
So with the entrepreneur's visa, is it a cap on how many people will be approved on a year?
No. The answer is no. We have not set a cap. I mean, it would be open to us to do so in the light of experience. Can I say the more high quality, effective, productive, enterprising entrepreneurs we can attract, the better. Because they drive jobs. They will create, entrepreneurs create jobs. Any new business. I mean, this is why we're doing so much to encourage new businesses, whether it's through the entrepreneur's visa or by reason of the very generous tax offsets and capital gains tax exemptions for investing in early stage ventures. Very, very substantial incentives, because one of the things we've learnt whether from life's experience or from the experience in other countries, as I was saying earlier, that even if you start a new venture, a new business, and let's say it goes well for a while and then for whatever reason it doesn't succeed, you may have lost some money, your investors may have lost some money, but the overall economy massively benefits, because you are wiser, your employees are wiser, your investors are wiser, everyone's learnt something, and the ecosystem benefits. That's why cultural change is so important. We've got to be prepared to have a go and be more prepared to embrace risk and experimentation. And it goes with this package too. Can I tell you? Every change that we make here, every step that we take with this, we are going to examine in the future and see how it's performed. And those things that do well, we'll do more of. And those things that do not do so well, we'll do less of, and we may do something else. This is not a one-off announcement. This is not the first and last word of this government on innovation. This is an absolutely critical theme of our administration, to ensure that we are always driving innovation, because I promise you that is the future. That is our future. It's the future for our jobs and ours, our children, our grandchildren. Innovation is a big cultural measure. It's something that we need to be better at in Australia and right across the board. And there's a lot of levers being pulled here, but there may well be more to come. There will be more to come, I have no doubt. David.
On those early stage tax offsets that you've announced, who are you targeting that at? Who do you expect it's going to be attractive to, and what sort of take-up are you expecting? I know you're careful about the budgeting on this, but what sort of take-up are you expecting?
Well, let's look at the first one. So, for example, this is the tax incentive for very early stage investors. So this is a business that is in an innovative industry, innovative sector. It's incorporated during the last 3 years. It's not listed on any stock exchange. It has expenditure of less than $1 million and income of less than $200,000. So it's an early stage startup. So what we are proposing here is that if you invest in that, you will get a 20% tax offset. That means that up to $200,000 per year. So if you invested, say you invested the full $1 million, then you would have $200,000 off your tax bill from obviously assessed on your other income. So that's a very real incentive for you to back that new business. And in the future, if you hold your investment for 3 years or more and you sell out of it and make a gain, which we obviously hope you do, then you would be exempt from capital gains tax. Now, who is that going to incentivise? Well, pretty much any investor. But it sends a big signal as well. See, it sends a signal of confidence in the early stage startup sector, and it's this will drive substantial new investment.
Just looking at that page, the breakdown of how much money we're spending. On Paul's point, I mean, some of them aren't really a lot of money. Is that because the government doesn't think innovation costs a lot, or is it a sign of the economic times? And how do you plan to pay for this?
Well, I think you will find that a lot of the changes that we can do immediately aren't costly, but they're very significant changes to the way we'll be approaching things like tax losses and the intangible asset depreciation. Now, they might not have large amounts of money attached to them as big-ticket items, unlike, for example, the investments in the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Scheme, which is $1.5 billion over 10 years, or the synchrotron investment or the square kilometre array investment. But they are cultural changes that will have an impact in the short term and into the future. Now, they might not have big ticket items attached to them as new expenditures, but they might well have an impact on government revenues into the future. And I think some of them you'll find have got an asterisk saying these are almost impossible to quantify until we see what impact they have in the economy. So we're not actually looking for a big spending items, we're looking for the change to the culture in our economy, and that's what that reflects. But over time, of course, we are able to see how some of the other measures will increase spending.
Can I just flesh this out a little bit? If you do, the initiative relating to company losses is very significant. At the moment, to be able to take advantage of your tax losses, past losses, and offset them against income in the future, you either have to have continuing ownership or you have to have the same business. You have to be conducting, essentially precisely the same business. Now, obviously, new companies are always hungry for capital, so they're always bringing in new investors. So they invariably fail the same ownership test. The same business test constricts them to precisely what they were doing. Now, in other countries, and this is again, we have looked very widely at what's been done elsewhere. A test of predominantly similar business has been used, and what that means is, again, that if you've started your company, you've got one narrow application, which was fine. You thought that was going to hit the mark, hasn't worked out quite as you expected. Your investors still have faith in you, other people come in, so your ownership has changed, and you want to branch out into another area. You're using similar technology or technology that's been derived from what you've built, but you're moving into another line of business that's related. You would currently fail the same business test. You would pass the predominantly similar business test, so you can then continue to use the losses that you've racked up against your income in the future. So again, this is tailored. This may seem like a small change, but it actually will be very significant in terms of supporting that innovation culture, of entrepreneurship.
I'd also refer you to the insolvency reforms.
Yes.
Now they might not be a big ticket item of government spending, but not everything has to actually have a big ticket item attached to it to be a very important measure. But the insolvency laws will drive economic activity and keep businesses in business that should be staying in business over the medium term. They might not show up as a massive government expenditure, but they'll have a real impact in terms of driving jobs and growth in the economy.
Hey, just Laura, please. Yeah.
You talked about risk-taking, and in some ways there are a lot of risks in this for government. I mean, they're not big-ticket items, but there is a history of risk attached to giving upfront tax deductions to particular...
What is the risk?
Well, that people start to rort them, for example, film schemes and things like that. And I noticed that in the 20% scheme, you've still got to decide what the eligible business criteria will be. How heavily have you workshopped or tested this, or fire tested these as possible, rorts in the future?
Well, let me make two responses here. We obviously have a highly developed, concept of the type of businesses we're talking about, but we will develop the final definition collaboratively with the industry, and in particular with the advice of Innovation and Science Australia. So, and it's important to make sure you get that right, because often the devil is in the detail. But let me just say, Laura, I want to pick up on something you said about there are risks for government. You know something? There are risks for everybody. And we've got to be prepared to take risks. And that is why one of the aspects of the political paradigm I'm seeking to change is the old politics where politicians felt that they had to guarantee that every policy would work. They had to sort of water everything down so there was no element of risk. Let me tell you, I'm not guaranteeing that all of these policies will be as successful as we hope they will be. I'm very confident about it because we've worked very hard on it. We've had a great team. We've had a lot of good collaboration. But, you know, if some of these policies are not as successful as we like, we will change them and we will learn from them, because that is what a 21st century government has got to be. It has got to be as agile as the start-up businesses it seeks to inspire.
Yeah.
The $3 billion R&D tax concession untouched, given there's concern about its effectiveness and integrity?
Well, there have been concerns expressed about it, and it's a complex area. We've looked at it very carefully, the Minister and I and our respective advisors, and Innovation and Science Australia will be reviewing it carefully with the industry. It has been refined over time, and it will be refined in the future.
When we see some of this industry discussion, when we see some of the details of it, I mean, as Laura was saying, the tax breaks for eligible businesses are going to be coordinated with industry, and the entrepreneur visas are going to be, eligibility will be determined with the sector. When we see some of the details about that, those discussions?
Well, James, there's a lot of detail in the fact sheets associated with this announcement today, but you might note that some of the measures you've talked about start on the 1st of July 2016. And we've consulted a great deal with the stakeholders in the sector, something that Karen Andrews as the Assistant Minister for Science, Wyatt Roy as the Assistant Minister for Innovation, and I, the Prime Minister, have been consulting for 10 weeks or more about these measures. And this is a day to be very optimistic and positive about what we have come up with in those consultations. And it's important for those consultations to continue right up to the time that these measures are implemented. Obviously, there will be detail around some of the tax measures in particular, the visa measures in particular, but there's a lot of detail in these packages. And I think the Australian public takeout from this is that the government has a plan and an agenda around jobs and growth in the innovation and science sector, about putting it at the centre, and they would expect us to go away now with the Tax Office and with the Department of Industry, Innovation and Science and implement these measures. Remember too, there's a whole of government approach to this, so we're changing governance. There'll be a new subcommittee of the Cabinet called Innovation and Science, chaired by the Prime Minister. There'll be an interdepartmental committee, because this area covers 9 different portfolios. There'll be a delivery unit within the Department of Industry, Innovation and Science to drive the agenda. And Innovation and Science Australia will have a chair as Bill Ferris. Alan Finkel, the Chief Scientist, will be the Deputy Chair of Innovation and Science Australia. They will have a role in evaluating, advising and reviewing the NISA. That's a pretty comprehensive way of making sure that we get everything right. As the Prime Minister says, we might make mistakes, and the public, I think, will accept that rather than being too timid about making the necessary changes to drive our economy.
Hang on, Mr. Andrew
On to the changes to insolvency laws.
Yep.
It might encourage, to coin a phrase, some agility with the accountants of Australia. What is the ATO advice on this, and are they telling government that they perhaps need some more investment to ensure that some of the agility is not exposing the government to losses?
Okay, well, the changes we're proposing to insolvency laws to encourage entrepreneurship, innovation and business continuity, and ensure that more people keep their jobs and that more businesses keep going rather than being shut down by secured creditors in a peremptory way. Those changes have been recommended by that innovative gang at the Productivity Commission. So this is not something that's quite as revolutionary as you imagine. In fact, it was something I recommended or stated as the Coalition's policy in 2009. This has been a problem in Australia for a long time, particularly small and medium businesses will tell you this, that the way the insolvency laws have operated is that directors have had every incentive to, the minute there is a problem, to basically put in the administrators. And, you know, that's essentially curtains, because in large part because there are what are called ipso facto clauses in contracts with suppliers and customers which say the contract is terminated if you go into receivership or administration. Now, the changes that we're proposing to adopt, and they're changes that have been recommended for a long time, and I've been talking about them for many years, the PC recommends them. What they will do is they will actually protect creditors, they'll protect shareholders. It takes us some way, but not all the way, to the American Chapter 11 system. It's got a very heavy involvement of the courts, which, you know, we generally don't want to be as legalistic or lawyeristic as the Americans, but this is a good change, and it's something that's been very carefully considered, as I said, over many years, and most lately by the Productivity Commission. Mark.
Sorry, this is Mark Riley. Assuming that a lot of this innovation is going to be underpinned by broadband services, how much of a drag on innovation is the $16 to $27 billion blowout in the cost of the NBN, the delays in the rollout, the slower upload speed that's going to downgrade revenues?
Well, those three premises you've described are all regrettably untrue. So no, they're not. Look, I don't know whether you want to go into the NBN here, but let me just say to you that the NBN project was the single most reckless project of the former Labor governments. It was undertaken without any realistic idea of how long it would take to build or how much it would cost. We inherited it. This is one of the very rare occasions, very rare, where a bad project doesn't get worse and actually gets better, but it is rolling out much more rapidly than it would have done under the previous approach of Labor. It'll be finished 6 to 8 years sooner. It will cost about $30 billion less than it would under Labor. Those are not my numbers, that's the numbers from the management of the NBN Co. So I can assure you it's happening, and the speeds, both download and upload, are very high. And we're seeing very strong take-up. And last time I checked the rollout figures, and they're published every week, there's about 1.5 million premises that are able to connect to the NBN, and they are activating over 10,000 premises a week with that, that rollout rate, that activation rate increasing. It is the most complex infrastructure project ever undertaken in Australia. You know, as you've heard me say before, we wouldn't be starting from there, but we inherited it, and we have turned it around. But it's still it'll be finished by roughly 2020. It'll be finally complete by 2020, but obviously millions of people will have access to it long before then. So most Australians will have access to it long before then. David, you're
Prime Minister, you mentioned the Productivity Commission. You're sitting on a report from the Productivity Commission on start-up business and exits. I think amongst other things that report recommends that there's no serious funding constraints on small business. Do you agree with that conclusion, and are you going to put out a formal response to that PC report?
Well, we respond formally to all PC reports, but I can't. Look, David, I don't want to, give a one-line response to obviously a very detailed report. I'd say this generally about capital, in particular in the start-up area, in the tech, mostly in the tech sector. There is plenty of money available. There's, as you've seen from the venture funds that have been raised. The shortage or the weakness is at the very early stage. and that's why we've provided some real incentives there. When a business gets to the point that it's raising, 20 or 50 million, $100 million, if it's got to that point, there is plenty of money here and elsewhere in the world for that matter. So really, the part of there are many levers, there are many measures we have to adopt, but if we want to enjoy the ideas boom, if we want to be an innovation nation, then we have to make sure that we look very carefully at where there are weaknesses in the economy as it stands, in the market as it stands, and where we can provide a nudge, an incentive, a bit of encouragement to make the system work better. It's like a very big deal, which is the poor collaboration between research institutions, mostly universities, and business. Why are we so much worse at it here than, say, in the UK or the United States, where the academic culture is very similar, business culture is very similar? And the fact is that the measures by which you get research grants are all based largely on the publish or perish approach, so that you're valued as a researcher by how often your latest piece of research is cited in other academic work. So what we are doing with this is ensuring that one of the key criteria for securing support, getting that next research grant, is engaging with and cooperating with business and industry, and that's good for everybody, and it'll be good for the academics, it'll be good for industry. We have a very low ratio, if you like, of PhDs working in industry compared to very similar economies like, again, the US or the UK. This is one of the things that will change that. Bring business and research closer together, and the advantages of that are obvious. They can't just be operating in silos, not talking to each other. So these are all the nudges and changes and levers, incentives that we're undertaking. But this is all about unleashing the ideas boom. This is all about Australia becoming an innovation nation. There is a big cultural change afoot here. It's a mood of optimism, of entrepreneurship, of imagination, and that is what will drive our prosperity in the 21st century. And on that note, on that optimistic note, I will leave you to enjoy studying the package. Thanks very much.